Public domain publishing doesn't have to mean lazy, copy-paste reprints that disappoint buyers. There is a better way to do it, and in this video, I'm going to show you how. You're going to learn how to take a public domain book and turn it into a unique, high-value workbook or journal that serves your audience and earns you profit. We're going to cover how to find the right book, brainstorm meaningful additions, structure the content, and then design a product that people actually want to buy. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Rachel Harrison-Sund, and I help people turn simple book ideas into passive income streams. Now, if you don't know what a public domain book is, it's a book whose copyright has either expired or it was never copyrighted at all to begin with. A couple of examples are Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen and Walden by Henry David Thoreau. Now, the idea behind public domain publishing is to find a popular classic work, adapt the work in a creative way that adds real value to readers, thus creating a derivative work. Then you publish that derivative work on Amazon KDP. And because the work is in the public domain, you don't have to worry about violating anyone's copyright. Now, I suggest creating a derivative work, meaning you've created something totally brand new based on the public domain book that you're working from, because personally, I don't think there's any real value in simply reprinting a public domain work without adding any true value, even though legally you can do that. Repurposing public domain works has some real advantages. So firstly, you get to build on an incredible work that already exists. And there are huge libraries of classic content ready to repurpose. There's a really low barrier to entry, but really high creative potential, and there's existing demand. People are still actively searching for and buying these classic books, whether it's poetry, philosophy, children's books, whatever. Also, new books are entering the public domain every single year. And yes, you are allowed to publish public domain works on Amazon. Now, if you want some more information around KDP's rules on publishing public domain books, mistakes to avoid, and some really fun and creative examples of public domain books selling on Amazon right now, check out my recent video, Why Public Domain Books Are a Hidden Goldmine on Amazon KDP. I've linked to that down below. I've also linked to KDP's own help page that talks all about the rules around publishing public domain work. The main thing to consider, though, is that you want to add genuine value to these works. This is not about some crappy copy and paste job that leaves a customer who is presumably a fan of the original work disappointed and complaining to Amazon. This is no way to build a business. But if you are a teacher, a therapist, a coach, an artist, a designer, or some other type of creative who loves books, this can really be a great opportunity for you to breathe some new life into a classic work. Now, one really fun and creative way to do that is to adapt a public domain work into a journal or a workbook, and that is what we're going to be doing right now. But first, if you want step-by-step instructions on how to publish and then make money with your public domain work after you've made it, download my free guide, which I've linked to down below, 3 steps to publishing your first low-content book in less than a day. So first thing you want to do is find a public domain book to work with. This can be a public domain book that you're already familiar with and interested in working with. You can go to ChatGPT and you can ask for suggestions there, or you can browse public domain book sites like Project Gutenberg, Hathi Trust, Library of Congress digital collections. I've linked to all of those down below. Now, for this example, I'm going to be running with Henry David Thoreau's Walden, which was published way back in 1854, so this book is well into the public domain. Next is you want to actually read the book. This is going to be the best way to understand the main themes of the book, as well as how to determine how you're going to be able to add true value moving forward with the project. Next is to brainstorm some ideas as to how you can add value. So a couple of really creative ways to add value include turning a classic into an illustrated children's book. So great example of this here, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. This is a Robert Frost poem that this person has then illustrated and turned into a children's book. You could add themed recipes like this book, Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, a book-to-table classic. When I asked ChatGPT to help me come up with some ideas, there were some great ones. One of them was riffing off of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It was a build-your-own-monster STEM activities workbook. It also suggested the Poems of Emily Dickinson and guided poetry coloring book, which I thought was also a really neat idea. But really, you want to just think about ways that make sense for the specific book that you're working with. Now, for Walden, which is about Henry David Thoreau's time spent living out in solitude, in nature, in a cabin that he built all by himself, I thought a reflective journal about deliberate living would make a lot of sense. So with ChatGPT's help, I came up with the Walden Journal, Reflections for a Deliberate Life. Next, you want to think about your target audience, okay? Is this children? Is it teens, young adults, adults? Knowing this is going to inform what to include in terms of content, as well as the design choices you're going to make with the interior and the cover file. Now have some fun with this. Don't be afraid to do something unexpected. That Robert Frost poem example that I just showed you, that poem wasn't written explicitly for children, but the person working on that project turned it into a children's book with beautiful illustrations, and it worked so well. Next is to structure the journal or the workbook and write the content. Now, as a public domain work, you can use the entire text, you can use portions of it, you can add your own content, whatever you want. Now, I used ChatGPT and I asked it to help me explore ideas for a prompt journal based on Walden. All right, so the prompt I used, I asked it to help me create a reflective journal based on Walden's teachings, including the journal chapters that correspond to each chapter of Walden. And then each journal chapter should include a one-page summary of the main concept behind the corresponding chapter of Walden, a poignant quote pulled from the chapter, a series of journal prompts corresponding to the theme of the chapter, and then a suggested activity that corresponds to the theme of the chapter. So Chat then created a chapter by chapter, really incredible journal outline, including that summary, the quote, the prompts, and activities for every single chapter of Walden. Now I liked what it gave me, but I wanted it to expand a little bit more. So I said, could you expand the summaries so they're at least 1 to 3 paragraphs long, so that people reading it get a better sense of what that chapter was actually about. Now, really important here when you're working with ChatGPT or Claude or any other AI, this is not a copy and paste job, okay? Think about your AI as your creative brainstorming companion, all right? You want to review the ideas with discernment, make adjustments, add your own thoughts, say it in your own voice, but man, is this a great way to get a rough first draft out really fast. Now, I was really happy with where this was going. You can see what I've got so far. Chapter 1, economy, I've got this 2-paragraph summary, the quote, the prompts, the activity. And when you're happy with what you've got, then it's time to move on to designing your book. So think about, is this going to be text only? Do you want to add illustrations or graphics? Think about what would help craft the best experience for your reader. From there, you can create this from scratch in a program like InDesign, Affinity Publisher, Canva. Now for this example, I've used a customized Canva template for the cover and for the interior. So in Canva, for the cover, I clicked on templates, and then I entered watercolor forest into the search bar. I found this design that I was pretty happy with. Then I went ahead and customized it. I turned it into a 6x9, and I added in my title, Walden Reflections for a Deliberate Life. Now, of course, if this was a real book that I was going to publish, this is just an example, but if I was actually going to publish it, of course I would need a spine, I would need a back cover. For that, you can go to KDP, you can download one of their cover templates, which you can pop right into Canva, and that will help you create your front cover, your back cover, and your spine. Now for the interior templates, I went back to templates and I entered prompt journal into the search bar. Lots of results here, but I ended up finding this template. I really loved the simplicity of this design. I thought that it fits in really well with the Walden theme. So you can see what I've done here. I've got the name of the chapter. I've got the quote that I've pulled out. This is my little summary of the chapter of Walden. And then I've got the prompts here. I've got a couple of reflection prompts, and then I've also got the activity. So I've got reflect and implement. And then I would just go ahead and create all 18 of the chapters from Walden in this way. And then I've got my book. Now, once you've got your complete book, you've got your interior file and your cover file, you're gonna download those for print, and then you can publish to KDP. Now, really important, when you are publishing public domain work, you wanna attribute the original author. Now, the way you do this in your KDP listing is gonna depend on how you've adapted the work and how extensive those modifications have been. Again, I have linked to the KDP help page where it talks all about public domain works, how to attribute the author. Please check that out and make sure you thoroughly read it and understand it before you publish. And if you're ever unsure about how to properly attribute that original author, just email KDP directly for guidance. Now, if you missed that original video I did on publishing public domain works, you can watch it right here. And if you liked this video, please hit the like button, do subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.